Hello, 7th graders. Today you're going to be going through this video and filling out a worksheet based on the words that you hear in this video. So our first word is identity. I'm going to go through each word and you will fill in what's missing on the worksheet. So our first word is identity, and this is our unit topic. So this one's really important. So identity is the unique and entire set of characteristics that make up what a person or thing is known or considered to be. So this is really who you are. And identity makes up a lot of different parts of a person. So your friends, your family, your hobbies, your preferences, your career choice, all of that, how you learn, all of that creates your identity. The next word is sense of self, and this is one's perception of themselves. So, this is the way that you see yourself. This little image down at the bottom here says the way a person thinks about and views his or her traits, beliefs, and purpose within the world. So, that is sense of self. The next word is fiction. Fiction is any narrative consisting of imaginary people, events, or descriptions. In other words, a narrative not based strictly on history or fact. I always tell kids to think about F for fake and F for fiction. That helps me remember which one is fiction and which one is nonfiction. So, fiction is made up or fake books, novels, even like TV shows, anything like that that is made up, not true stories, is fiction. Our next word is nonfiction. So this is the opposite. So nonfiction is writing that is based on facts, real events, and real people. These can include biographies or histories. Nonfiction texts teach, inform, and explain real things. They also deal with real people, places, and events, and it is the opposite of fiction. Our next word is figurative language. So I've described this as a category word or an umbrella word. And this includes a bunch of different types of figurative language, as you can see in the chart. Figurative language is when you use a word or phrase that does not have its normal, everyday, literal meaning. So, some types of figurative language are alliteration, metaphor, simile, hyperbole, personification, and onomatopoeia. In class, we've learned about similes and metaphors. We've also learned about imagery. Imagery is also another example of figurative language, but this is just some examples of figurative language. Our next word is metaphor, and this is an example also of figurative language. So, metaphor is direct comparisons between two things. So, I have said a couple of these in class. You are my sunshine is one of them. Also, it's raining cats and dogs. Those are both metaphors. A metaphor on this page is you ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. So, comparing the person who is like complaining or crying to a hound dog. So, metaphors are direct comparisons. And the big difference between metaphors and similes is that similes use the words like, as, or than, and metaphors are just direct comparisons between two things. Similes are comparisons using like, as, or than the words. So examples, there's a bunch of examples on this slide. We're like two peas in a pod. Cute as a kitten, cold as ice, blind as a bat, as sweet as sugar. Her eyes shine like the sun. Your socks smell like a dirty old dog. So those words like, as, or than are really your hint to it being a simile versus a metaphor. This page also helps us understand similes and metaphors a little better and shows us the difference between similes and metaphors. So a simile is her heart is like gold. In connection with that, a metaphor is her heart is gold. So you lose the like or the as or the than. The world is like a stage, and then the metaphor is the world is a stage. He eats like a pig, and the metaphor would be he is a pig. The simile is you are like a rock, and the metaphor would be you are a rock. Here's my example that I like to use. Your eyes are like sunshine, and you are my sunshine, and poor as dirt or sea of sand. So that is the difference. Those like, as, or than words really tell the difference between similes and metaphors. Both are comparing two things, but those signal words tell the difference between these two. Imagery is our next word. And imagery is the author's use of language that appeals to the five senses, and it's also what you imagine in your brain when you're reading. This comes up all the time in reading. We imagine what's happening in the book as we're reading it. Anything you can see in your head in a book, in a poem, in a song, that is imagery. The next word is personification. Personification is giving non-human objects human characteristics. So, for instance, the flowers danced in the breeze, the wind whistled throughout the day, or one look at the garden and you could tell that the plants were begging for water. Our next word is protagonist. Protagonist is the leading character or one of the major characters in a drama, movie, novel, or other fictional text. In our book Restart, obviously Chase is the protagonist. On this slide, you can also see Shrek, Harry Potter, and Simba, who are also protagonists in their movies. The opposite of that is an antagonist. This is a person who actively opposes or is hostile to someone or something. They are also known as an adversary. Um, in the book, the old Chase is kind of the antagonist. We also have Aaron and Bear, his good buddies, that are also antagonists. We have Lord Farquaad from Shrek. We have Voldemort from Harry Potter and Scar from Lion King, who are also antagonists. This one we're not gonna test on this test, but characterization is bringing characters to life. It's the creation or construction of a character. So you can skip this one for now. We're also going to skip the next two and go to plot. Plot is the main events of a play, novel, movie, or similar work, devised and presented by the writer as an interrelated sequence. So they're in order. This is called a story map or a plot map. And this tells how the story goes from beginning to end, and all the different parts that are involved in it. The next one is conflict. Conflict is a struggle, problem, or opposition. There's a lot of different types of conflict that we're going to talk about at some point. So there's person versus society, person versus nature, person versus technology, the person versus themselves, and person versus the supernatural. So all of these are different conflicts that characters can face in books. The next one is resolution. And as I said in class, this is the ending or the solution to the story. So it's also called the denouement. This is where the problem is somehow resolved or comes to an end or close. So resolution is kind of the end of the story. Theme. Theme is an idea that keeps coming up in a work of literature. It's the message, moral, or lesson. There are a lot of different themes here that you can see. Never giving up, love as a theme, overcoming challenges. It's not usually said by the author, but it comes up many times throughout the story. A couple of these other ones I think we skipped. I think we skipped sensory language, but that's connecting to the senses. I know we skipped illusion. So I'm going to go to foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a literary device by which an author hints at what is to come later in the movie or book or story. They give hints as to what is to come later on. In this, we have a caveman kind of texting on a stick. And then in his shadow, we have a more civilized man who appears to have a phone. So this kind of foreshadows the future. I thought this one is kind of funny. So we got a stick figure foreshadowing for the whole that's coming up. And our last word, I believe, yep, I think this is the last one, is point of view. This is a perspective, the perspective from which a text is written. It has to do with who is telling the story and who is narrating it. There are many different types of point of view. There's first person, which uses words like I, me, my, mine, we, our, or ours. There's second person, which you don't see a lot. This is kind of an awkward one. You use words like you and yours. So the story is told from the perspective of you, which is kind of strange. You see this a lot in like instruction manuals, maybe those choose your own adventure books. If you've heard of those are pretty great. And then there's third person, which is the one that we see the most, along with first person. We see that a lot too. So third person is he, she, it, they, character names instead of I. So that's one that we see all the time. So that is the end of your vocab video. If you could please go through the video and make sure that you have answered all the questions on the worksheet, that would be fabulous. Great work, and you can continue studying your vocab for our test on Wednesday. Great work.